Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're going to be conducting a full PPR live mock draft for a 12-team league. On today's episode, I'm going to be giving you guys my perspective and opinions as to how I personally approach my draft when I select the back end of the first round. Currently, I'm set to draft from the 1.10 spot of our first round. And the main reason I wanted to go ahead and do so was because a lot of people have personally reached out to me, whether it's down in the comment section or on Twitter, asking, Andrew, how do you draft at the back end of the first? Because there are so many viable options in a full PPR league, whether it is going running back like Austin Eckler, or even potentially investing in tight end with Travis Kelce, or Tyreek Hill at the wide receiver position. There are a variety and multitude of ways to approach your draft and find equal success. But how exactly do I approach it? We'll go ahead and kind of give you guys my thought process behind it. Again, in comparison to drafting in the first round, we will consecutively see every single draft McCaffrey, Cook, Henry, Alvin Kamara, Zeke come off the board. But the back end of the first round is always going to look different with different strategies and different guys coming off the board because you select back-to-back relatively quickly. You can go ahead and make some, riskier selections and get paid off in the second round accordingly. We'll talk about the different strategies that I want to use. We'll, of course, go through a couple simulated drafts. Then we'll get into our live mock draft where we'll be applying those strategies in real time and try to build the best possible roster we can going into our 2021 season. But before we begin today's video, I of course want to take the opportunity to thank you guys for the incredible support. For those of you guys who come out every single day smashing that like button, commenting down below with kind words, I cannot thank you guys enough. But again, you guys have been a part of the community for quite some time and you know the content is going to be there and we are going to be delivering 2021 fantasy football championships. For those of you guys who are new to the channel and have not yet subscribed already, help us get to our next goal, 37,000 subscribers. Click that subscribe button and gain an advantage on the rest of your league. Again, we're making content for the entirety of the 2021 season, whether it's the upcoming videos that are must draft strategies, the strength of schedule videos, tier lists, all of that coming down the line this offseason to get you ready for your upcoming drafts. The content doesn't stop there as we go into the regular season with ranking videos for every single position, going into Sunday morning live streams, and of course, Monday waiver wire episodes, making sure that we're solidifying our lineups and picking up the best available prospects to win ourselves the 2021 fantasy football championship. So consider subscribing, make sure you click that bell notification button and join the community. Thank you very much. All right, so let's get into talking about the strategies that I like to use going into the first round, but specifically the back end of the first round. The statistics that I'm about to throw up on screen are something that many of you have potentially seen in the last couple of days, is because I showed this in another mock draft video. In specific, I wanted to talk about the drop-off in production for a full PPR league between running backs and wide receivers. As we previously saw, the running back position was all over the board, with 7 of them coming off of the board relatively quickly, and that's pretty much every single league, regardless of the scoring format. But I wanted to go ahead and kind of give you guys some perspective as to how valuable early wide receivers are in a full PPR league in comparison to early running backs. When I went ahead and I took the drop off in production and compared the average overall productivity of running backs who finish within the top 12 of their position in comparison to wide receivers who finish within the top 12 of their position from 2018 to 2020, I found the following numbers. The RB1s averaged 284.78 fantasy points per season, while the wide receiver ones slightly outproduced them by producing 285.11 fantasy points per season. That in itself kind of continues to give me more confidence in investing in a wide receiver like Tyreek Hill in the first round, because why not go ahead and get a guy that we know has consistently produced, is a part of the best offense with the best quarterback, and in 2018 and 2020 has been either the number 1 or number 2 overall wide receiver in fantasy. Now, besides giving myself more confidence in potentially drafting a wide receiver one or even the tight end one, Travis Kelce, in my first round of my 2021 fantasy football drafts with his respective drop off in production, I wanted to also go ahead and highlight the fact that RB1s in comparison to RB2s over the last 3 seasons have been an incredible drop off in production. I mean, it is a staggering number. The fact that on average RB1s scored 92.23 fantasy points more than RB2s over the last 3 seasons is unbelievable. A 32.39% drop off obviously shows why the running back position comes off the board as quickly as it does. And this drop off in production has obviously instilled fear in many of us, which is why a lot of us are drafting running backs relatively early in full PPR drafts, despite the fact that you really don't have to. There are other running backs down in these depths that, though in a half PPR in a standard league, aren't as valuable. You can go ahead and get a Chase Edmonds, who was the number 25 overall back last season, who should see more opportunity this season, and he could easily be an RB2 later in that 7th round. But a lot of people go ahead and ignore that because they're so afraid of what is potentially going to happen if in fact they don't invest in RB early. In a full PPR, it's a completely different landscape in the idea that you can wait for running back, invest heavily in wide receiver, and be paid dividends on that. Talking about the difference between wide receiver 1s and wide receiver 2s, it's only a 62.91% drop on average and a 22.07% drop off. To be honest, that's not that bad considering the fact that the comparison between RB2s and wide receiver 2s is as significant, nearly 30 points. I would love to go ahead, draft an RB early, but then also bolster my lineup up with wide receivers at the wide receiver 2 range who have upside. Guys, of course, like I've mentioned earlier, Deontay Johnson's, Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, Cooper Kupps of the world that obviously are going to have a lot of upside this upcoming season and can definitely fill in and be better overall selections than reaching for running backs that are, of course, guys that are in the middle tier that I'm not 100% confident with. But either way, just wanted to give you guys some perspective in regards to the statistics. And then now that we've kind of covered that, it might give you a little bit of an understanding as to why I'm going to make the following selections that I do. We're going to start off with our first pick here at the 1.10 spot of the first round, full PPR. Though there isn't a clear-cut decision to be made, there isn't a guy that definitively is better than everyone else. I wanted to go ahead and just kind of weigh the options. Austin Eckler's not a bad choice. He could potentially see over 100 receptions this upcoming season, and that in itself gives him a lot of value in a full PPR. I could go Tyreek Hill. In 2018 and in 2020, he's been a top 2 wide receiver both seasons, scoring double-digit targets associated with one of the best offenses and the best quarterback in the league. Or I could go with the number 1 target on the Kansas City Chiefs, Travis Kelce, who of course has been the number 1 tight end for 5 consecutive seasons and is going to have such a significant drop-off in production in comparison to the rest of the tight end position that it's not a bad decision. But the question that I have to ask myself is, if in fact I do draft Travis Kelce, where am I going in the second round? Because I cannot let this draft get away from me and get to a point where 20 selections come and go and I haven't selected a running back. So in fact, I have to take a running back, but I'm going to hope that a running back 6 rounds in the second round. I'm going to draft in Travis Kelce. I'm going to believe in the hype and continue to build on his potential here. Wide receivers and running back come off the board accordingly. And who else is left available? Najee Harris in the second round. That is a no-brainer for me, in my opinion. The fact that he's going to get all the opportunity on the ground and through the air, potentially be the Le'Veon Bell for that team this upcoming season, gives me a lot of confidence. Now that our third round selection is kind of wrapped around, we of course see 2 quarterbacks, 2 tight ends, and a bunch of running backs and wide receivers come off the board. The best available running backs: Carson, Dobbins, Sanders, Jacobs, Henderson. I think I can go ahead and potentially wait on these guys, potentially even in the 4th, maybe even 5th round. I want to take a wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, you're coming home. Absolutely a great selection here. I think in terms of the wide receiver 1 for the Dallas Cowboys, it could potentially still be Amari Cooper, but CeeDee Lamb, when Dak Prescott was healthy last year, was an unstoppable force. He's going to be a huge part of that offense this upcoming season. Now, what do I want to do with our following round? We're in the 4th round here. We could once again take another wide receiver, or we could invest in a running back and then just kind of see how it entirely pans out. I think there's a lot of wide receiver depth here, but I also think that the wide receiver position is going to disappear relatively quickly because we are playing in a full PPR setting, and the wide receiver position is extremely valuable, especially considering we're in that wide receiver 2 range and the upside is in that 220 average spot. So as of right now, we go into this round. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take the guys I like. I like CeeDee Lamb. I like Deontay Johnson. Obviously, the rest of the wide receivers will come off the board accordingly, and we'll see how it kind of pans out. Okay, what has kind of fallen back to me in the 5th round? I mean, it seems to me that a lot of people are avoiding Darrell Henderson, and at least this simulated draft is. I'm going to take Darrell Henderson in the 5th. I like the roster that I've built thus far. The tight end position doesn't need to be addressed by myself. I could go quarterback here, but I think it's relatively early. I know the 6th round, grabbing one of the top 4 quarterbacks overall for this upcoming season could be a great selection, but I honestly think I can wait. When I look at the wide receiver position, there is still a lot of talent. I like Courtland Sutton. I like Chase Claypool, but I've already drafted a Pittsburgh wide receiver. Don't want to go too heavy in that direction. I think potentially going Travis Etienne here, a guy that is probably going to get majority of the running back work and receiving work out of this backfield for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2 consecutive seasons has produced a top 12 fantasy running back in the form of James Robinson and, of course, Leonard Fournette. So I invest in a running back there, grab my 3rd, and now I want to, of course, go after wide receivers, guys that I'm confident with that can help kind of build my roster a little bit more. But before I do so, I want to go ahead and make sure that I grab a quarterback. Justin Herbert, you're coming home in the 7th round. That's an easy selection in my opinion. The wide receiver position, Laviska Shenault, Corey Davis coming off the board is nothing that I'm worried about. What I want to go after are sleepers, guys that aren't really being looked at as potential upside plays. In the 8th round, is it too early to draft Mecole Hardman? Maybe. Hopefully I can get him in the 9th. But as of right now, I do honestly like a couple of these guys. I decided to go with Marvin Jones in the 8th round because, again, when I think about what potentially Marvin Jones can be in comparison to the other wide receivers, Curtis Samuel, Jarvis Landry, Jalen Waddle, I honestly think Marvin Jones can be the number 1 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I'd rather have the number 1 for a team than the number 3, like Laviska Shenault might be with, playing in the slot position, or a number 2 like Michael Gallup. I just rather go ahead, draft a solidified wide receiver that in 3 out of the last 4 seasons has scored 9+ touchdowns, been an awesome part of that entire Detroit Lions offense. I think with Trevor Lawrence, could be the number 1 in Jacksonville. Now that we get into this next round, of course, we're looking for running backs to invest in. James Conner is the starter for his own respective team. I talked about it earlier this week. And then I'll go ahead and get into the 10th round. And yes, I could even go and draft another running back once again, potentially hope for the upside of Zach Moss. But I talked about it a little bit earlier. I want Mecole Hardman in the 10th round. I think he's got a lot of upside of being a potential wide receiver 3, being the number 2 of the Chiefs offense in terms of the wide receiver position. He'll probably be number 4 in total targets behind Kelsey, Tyreek Hill, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I still think Mecole Hardman has a lot of potential upside in this offense. So now that we've kind of gone through 10 rounds, we've, of course, drafted our tight end that we're never going to replace. We took a stud quarterback in the 7th round, and we've pretty much lined up with 4 running backs and 4 wide receivers that I personally like. I drafted the guys I really wanted and ended up with a roster that I personally think could compete for a championship in 2021 in a full PPR setting. Now the question remains, what if we don't draft Travis Kelce in the 1st round? Where would this draft go, and how exactly is it going to expand out? We'll try that just right now. All right, so we're selecting at the number 10 position. I clicked the refresh button, and all of a sudden, the wide receiver and tight end position is quickly taken off the board. That's fine. What are we going to go ahead and do from here on out? We look at the running back position, and though there are running backs already coming off the board relatively quickly, there isn't enough talent there to just kind of give me the vigor to just grab an Austin Eckler and just be confident with it. I just don't feel that right now. So let's go wide receiver first. Let's take Tyreek Hill. Let's go ahead and see how this draft comes back down to me. Of course, the running back position absolutely just eaten up at the end there. I'm going to go Najee Harris again in the 2nd round. I think he's a fantastic 2nd round selection. And as we get into the 3rd round, of course, we'll see 2 tight ends off the board, a quarterback, okay, 2nd quarterback. And where exactly is our potential 3rd round going to take us? Again, similarly, I don't want to take another running back here. I want to invest in wide receiver. Okay, CeeDee Lamb continues to be a guy that I absolutely love to draft in the 3rd round / 4th round. And now that we get into the 4th round, again, Deontay Johnson's there. I like this potential draft strategy. Of course, I don't have the tight end in comparison to last time, so I will have to address the tight end position relatively early now. But as of right now, we'll take Darrell Henderson here in the 5th. It's almost like an identical draft all in all. It really hasn't even made that much of a difference. I guess it's a matter of preference as to what you take. Now that we've made our 5th round selection, the question remains, where are we going to potentially go in the 6th round? The tight end position, the quarterback position, they've both been addressed. There's only a couple good options left at tight end with Mark Andrews, maybe Noah Fant if I can get him a little bit later in our draft. Again, they get a lot of opportunity to the tight end position there in Denver based on their offensive coordinator loving to target their respective tight ends. Pat Shurmur, formerly of the New York Giants, force-fed Evan Ingram the ball. Now he's going to do that with Noah Fant in a full healthy season, which is going to be great. But as of right now, I think I'm going to wait on Mark Andrews. Unless he scores double-digit touchdowns, his reception total is not going to be good enough for a full PPR. I don't want to invest in quarterback too early. I think there's a lot of depth there. I'm going to go Kareem Hunt. He's associated with one of the best rushing offenses in the league. He's getting a lot of work in the passing game, and he's even going to get some red zone rushing attempts here and there. If Nick Chubb is to go down with an injury, we know he's an RB1. So that's a great investment in the 6th round. Now, what else could we potentially do here? Like I mentioned, I don't mind going Noah Fant here in the 7th. I think that's a decent investment, especially considering the tight end position is likely going to come off the board relatively quickly as soon as the draft goes away from me. I went ahead and did that accordingly. Now, when we look at what else is available, wide receivers, running backs, I guess we could go with a running back here. They don't really excite me. These are guys that are on that fringe level. I'd rather just get the quarterback that I want. I'm going to go ahead, grab Brady, and see how it potentially turns out. Now that we've addressed the first 8 rounds of this draft, I think it's time to potentially hop into a live mock draft and see how we can implement this to the best of its possible ability. So let's go ahead and do that right now. As promised, we are conducting a 12-team full PPR mock draft here. I am drafting from the number 10 overall spot, and as you can see, I'm at the mercy of the rest of the people in this league, depending on how long they take the draft, of course, but what selections they make. I'm looking for 3 specific positions. Either I'm going to draft a running back, wide receiver, or a tight end. Based on the selections that are made ahead of me, which again look like there are going to be a lot of running backs coming off the board, and as I say that, a wide receiver's taken, I'm still looking to draft the best available player on the board. Now, if that ends up being a Travis Kelce or a Devontae Adams based on this next selection, or maybe even Saquon Barkley wants to drop to me, I'm going to make that Saquon. I was getting excited. But either way, I like Devontae Adams as my number 1 overall selection here. I think he's the best wide receiver on the board, and certainly a better option than any of the other receiving options like Travis Kelce or any of the available running backs that are left. Now that I've made the wide receiver selection, like we mentioned a little bit earlier on today's episode when we were doing the simulation, we want to go ahead and address the running back position immediately. Now, there are a couple good options that are available, seeing as though Jonathan Taylor is still on the board, Najee Harris, Austin Eckler, Gibson, Mixon, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We're going to have an option of grabbing one of those guys, another wide receiver taken off the board. But if, in fact, Travis Kelce drops to me, I will honestly take Travis Kelce, and we're just going to throw this for a loop and see exactly what kind of a roster I can combine. And as I say, dude, I'm speaking things into existence. I'll mention a player and they're taken. So I'm not going to, I'm going to talk about Joe Mixon right now. Joe Mixon's a great player. Maybe Phineas wants, dang, I thought it was going to work. But either way, now that we go into our second round selection here, now that the second round has started, Najee Harris or Austin Eckler, those are the 2 players that I'm looking at, and I would absolutely love to have. These guys are both RB1s in a half or full PPR. Austin Eckler, of course, in a full PPR, in my opinion, is far more valuable because of his receiving upside. We've talked about, goodness, I talked it into existence finally. Austin Eckler comes home. I've talked about how many targets he's gotten with Justin Herbert at the helm of the Chargers starting quarterback position. When Austin Eckler was healthy last year, he was a fantastic running back. Going into 2021, has a lot of upside. So now that we've addressed, of course, the best available wide receiver in the first round, grab the running back in the second round because we want to avoid the drop-off in production and, of course, the running backs disappearing off of the board going into the third round. We're looking for wide receiver or running back in the third round. I have a couple players in mind that I'm willing to invest in at wide receiver, but mainly in the third round, I think running back is going to be the play, considering how volatile this draft has been. And I think, honestly, by the time it comes back, of course, we'll see a quarterback taken, 2 more tight ends taken, but I think the running back position might be relatively thin when it comes back around. And I don't want to give the 2 players to the right of my draft, the 11th and 12th pick, the opportunity of taking a running back from me when I want to go ahead and potentially grab someone like Darrell Henderson, Chris Carson, David Montgomery, one of those available running backs. But we'll see how this kind of all pans out. Either way, I'm looking running back or wide receiver. If a wide receiver by the name of Allen Robinson, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb drops to me in the third round, I'm going to automatically select them over probably just about any other prospect. I don't plan on investing in tight end or quarterback this early. So those are my thought processes in the script that I've kind of built in my own mind going into this draft. And once we get near our third round selection, we'll update you. All right, so as the third round meets its halfway point, we of course have seen one tight end come off the board, a quarterback, which typically comes off the board in the third, but that's fine at the end of the turn. We're waiting to see whether George Kittle is taken. Of course, if George Kittle wants to come down to us, we will automatically select him, but I doubt it gets to that position. The question remains which running backs and or wide receivers are available. I love Chris Carson, Darrell Henderson. Those are probably the best available running backs at this current juncture. But of course, like I mentioned, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, these are guys that if in fact they end up in my lap, I'm going to take. Someone taking a big leap of faith with Kyle Pitts, Terry McLaurin coming off the board, see right after. Again, I'm not, opposed. Oh man, the tight end position, here it comes. This is giving us a pretty good position in my opinion. I think CeeDee Lamb we're going to go running back. Like I mentioned, I had a specific script in mind. If Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, and Allen Robinson are on the board, we will take them. But otherwise, we're going to go running back. And it happened right in front of me. I'll take Chris Carson. I'm perfectly happy with that. I've solidified my second running back position. And I think based on, of course, the fact that the two teams after me might go running back within 2 out of the next 4 selections. I wanted to go ahead, get the inside track on a running back that I like, and then address the wide receiver position accordingly because there is so much depth there. I think I can come back around, get myself Robert Woods in the 4th round, and be happy with my Robert Woods wide receiver 2 option. And if not Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, either or. I think they're very much so interchangeable between the two of them. But either way, that is my thought process. So now that it comes back down the line to me, we're probably going to go wide receiver here. Again, 4 tight ends have come off the board. I'm not looking to invest in a TJ Hawkinson or Mark Andrews this early, especially in a full PPR. I think that's quite risky of a selection considering how much depth and how much upside the wide receivers currently have, like we talked about with the drop off in production. Okay, we saw Josh Jacobs come off the board. Really quickly before we continue, I just want to look at running backs. Darrell Henderson's still on the board, but we have to select a wide receiver at this point. We've already gone ahead and we've addressed both of our running backs. I think wide receiver is a must at this current moment in time, and I think Robert Woods is the guy that I'm absolutely all in on this upcoming season. I like the safety that Robert Woods provides, and I like the potential upside he provides in correlation with the fact that if you look at what Matthew Stafford has done with Marvin Jones, Kenny Golladay, even Golden Tate at times over the last 6 to 7 seasons, he has produced wide receiver 1s and 2s out of thin air because, again, even though these guys aren't the upper echelon of the receiver position, they're still getting an ample amount of opportunity, and the guy that's throwing them the ball is one of the best in the league. I think when you implement that into the Rams offense, I think Robert Woods just takes it to the next level and elevates himself this upcoming season. I'm relatively certain he's finished as the wide receiver 1 or 2 in each of the last 3 seasons. It's just going to elevate him this upcoming season. He's going to be that much more comfortable. As the 4th round turns into the 5th, the question will remain, where am I looking next? Of course, I've already addressed my 2 starting wide receivers and 2 starting running backs. Typically, in every league that I play in, we play with 3 starting wide receivers. On Yahoo, unfortunately, you cannot change the settings of the mock draft, but that's all fine. We'll go ahead and still draft accordingly if, in fact, I had a 3rd open wide receiver spot. So we're still looking, of course, for wide receivers and running backs to continue to build depth, but we're also looking for, if, in fact, Mark Andrews wants to drop to me in the 5th round, or a quarterback with immense value, similar to a guy like Kyler Murray. I doubt he's going to drop to me, but if he does, I'd be willing to go ahead and invest there. Once again, when my 5th round selection is near, I'll go ahead and fast forward. All right, so our 5th round selection is just about to be underway. We've, of course, seen a lot of wide receivers, 2 tight ends come off the board, a couple quarterbacks, which are very surprising, but it is now my selection, man. If Julio Jones dropped to me in the 5th round, I would have absolutely snagged him up. But what do we have available? We've got a good amount of running backs. Travis Etienne and or Kareem Hunt who are available. Wide receivers, I mean, I'm not too hot on these wide receivers. I think the quarterback position is fire right now, but I'm fine with getting Herbert later. I think I'm going to go running back. I'm going to draft Travis Etienne. I think he's going to get majority of the passing work in this offense, if not maybe even more than half of the rushing work. When you go ahead as a new head coach, like Urban Meyer is with the Jacksonville Jaguars, and you commit by drafting a running back in the 1st round, you're establishing that, hey, though we have James Robinson, we fully believe that Travis Etienne is going to be the running back of the future for this team. And to be honest, the Jacksonville Jaguars are probably going to have to throw the ball a lot this season. I think Travis Etienne is a fantastic investment here, getting my 3rd running back. Now the question remains, do I continue to go with wide receiver in this upcoming round, or do I wanted the Kyler pick. It's okay. Kyler's going to come off the board. I think I'm going to go Justin Herbert. I think that's probably what my next selection is going to be. Assuming, of course, this gentleman doesn't. He went Tyler Higbee. Okay. Of course, we still have Mike Davis on the board. T. Higgins is not a bad selection at all. I just think that I can come back in the following round and get a wide receiver that I'm happy with. I'm going Justin Herbert here and just lock down my lineup here. So, again, we've got ourselves, in my opinion, a quarterback that's probably in the top 7 or 8. 3 running backs that I'm extremely confident with that have PPR upside, and 2 of the strongest wide receivers that you can possibly find. If one of those tight ends had fallen to me, I probably would have invested there, but unfortunately they didn't. So I instead are probably going to have to invest in like a Noah Fant or Dallas Goedert in the coming rounds. When I mean the coming rounds, probably in the 7th, 8th, 9th, but ultimately I could just wait. A lot of the guys that I like an Irv Smith, Anthony Firkser, these guys are guys. I can maybe get them in the double-digit rounds, like I got TJ Hawkinson in the double-digit rounds last year. If you guys remember last season, I was on the TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant train. Those were both guys that are closely involved with George Kittle because they all went to the same college. It's pretty much tight end university over there. So I think that if in fact I can just wait and grab a couple tight ends later in our draft that have very little risk but a lot of potential reward, that could be another option. But I'm glad I took quarterback. I mean, the quarterback position is flying off the board. Perhaps I could have gone Kyler in the 5th, but I really do like the Travis Etienne pick there in order to kind of solidify my third running back / flex position that has, of course, receiving upside. Either way, once our 7th round selection is just about to be underway, I'll let you guys know. All right, so our 7th round selection is just about to be underway. Noah Fant came off the board with a variety of quarterbacks and running backs, of course, following suit. Now, in terms of like what is the best available option here, I could go and grab a running back theoretically and just build depth there. But when I look at the running back position, Gordon, Fournette, Mostert, David Johnson, Ronald Jones, these just seem like they're going to be the guys of the past. Like the future is not in that group, and I don't know if an RB2 even exists there, unless one of the other, like if Ronald Jones goes down with an injury, then Leonard Fournette gets a boost, vice versa. If David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay end up splitting, it's just going to be a mess. Melvin Gordon, if Javonte Williams is the real deal and starts taking snaps, that's going to hurt. But ultimately, when I look at what else is available around the league, I think I want to address my third wide receiver position. I like the value of getting Juju Smith-Schuster as my third wide receiver. Guys, let me just put it in perspective. As much as I've been talking about Deontay Johnson being the breakout potential wide receiver one this upcoming season and, getting into that like 10 to 12 kind of range, and Chase Claypool, of course, double-digit touchdowns last season. He's not a bad option, of course, selected in the 5th round of this draft. As much as I've talked about those two guys, Juju Smith-Schuster is kind of done dirty on a weekly basis. He had more receptions than both of those guys. He's playing in the slot, which he's far more comfortable in, and he's going to be in an offense that's throwing the ball 650 times this year. And if, in fact, that is the case, Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be able to find a lot of productivity. I got distracted there for a second. Somebody took a defense in the 8th round. Anyway, it's like a flash grenade hit me or a stun grenade. I'm befuddled. Anyway, Juju Smith-Schuster has a lot of value, and especially as a wide receiver 3 in a full PPR, the amount of targets he gets and the receptions and the amount of work he saw in the red zone. He saw the most red zone total targets in comparison to Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool last season, and the touchdowns were there to support it. Now, in terms of our next selection, of course, I was distracted by the defensive selection there. I want to go tight end, but it's really not a great spot. So at this current moment in time, I'm just going to go ahead. The draft board is a 25-second selection. The Los Angeles defense is the reason why I selected Brandon Cooks there. But to be honest, Brandon Cooks isn't a bad option. I just got flashbanged, and man, it's only a 25-second timer. I didn't even realize that. Anyway, looking forward, of course, we were going to look to draft a wide receiver there because the running backs in that group just weren't exciting enough. And I think in a full PPR, I can go ahead and wait and grab PPR backs like a Jamal Williams, potentially J.D. McKissick, James White, who's practically free in drafts, and then go ahead and address it accordingly from there. As we approach our pick in the 9th round, as quickly as this draft was looking like it was coming together well across the board, a couple defensive selections were made. Somebody went with Young-Ho Koo in the 8th round. Now I understand Young-Ho Koo has won me a fantasy championship, and I know he's probably won many of you a fantasy championship, but let's not take kickers in the 8th and 9th round. This pretty much is a scrap draft, but either way, I want to go ahead and just finalize the first 10 rounds of this draft and kind of give you guys my perspective as to where I'd be going in terms of the 9th and 10th round selections. I still want tight end and I still want running back. I think tight end I can wait on, considering the fact that the two teams that are selecting after me have already addressed their tight end positions. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take James Conner because, again, I have talked about him being the starter in the full-time role there in Arizona. So then the question remains, where am I going to go with the tight end position? Irv Smith was taken a little bit earlier, who I would have potentially liked to have selected. But in terms of what is left remaining, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Evan Ingram, Logan Thomas, these are guys that I'm not 100% sold on. I like the idea of Logan Thomas or Adam Trotman this year, but just to kind of leave you guys with the last piece of information, I really do like Anthony Firkser. The Tennessee Titans offense is 100% predicated on being able to run the ball, which means that there's going to be tight ends on the field blocking, but also hit play action and find Logan Thomas. I thought he almost took my tight end. And find guys like Anthony Firkser down the side of the field while, you're stacking the box for Derrick Henry and double covering both Julio Jones and A.J. Brown, he's going to find himself open a lot of times over the middle. Either way, thank you everybody for watching. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the like button down below. And if you think that Younghoe Koo should be an 8th round pick, let me know down in the comment section. I don't think that's the case, but either way, it's just funny. Thank you guys for watching, and until tomorrow, I'll see you guys. Peace.